Over the years, really all the way back to the beginning of 721, we coined the phrase the A-plus life. The A-plus life. And all those years ago, I'm sure it came from Jesus' own words in John 10:10, I have come so that you may have life and life to the full. Paul writes about it in his letter to Timothy in 1 Timothy in chapter 6. He talks about the life that is truly life. The life that is truly life. The life to the full. Do you have that? Are you even close? Because you can have it. And Jesus said, I've come so that you may have it, that you may live it. So this summer, we are taking just one video at a time, and we're talking about the A-plus life. And today we'll do our second video on this. I think you're going to enjoy it. I hope it strikes a chord with you. Hi, I'm Sam Hunter. This is 721 Live, the media arm of 721 Ministries. Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you're with us. Follow us. Hit that subscribe so you'll get these videos as they come out. We're on a lot of different platforms, so you can find us just about anywhere. The A-plus life. Life to the full. What I realized shortly after I was born again was that this was something I was not expecting. I had not heard about this in church. I had not heard about this in any organizations, anything I'd done. And what I went back to all of my friends, my closest friends, I should say, and I said, now this has happened. I'm sure it freaked them out because Sam Hunter born again at the age of 38, that would freak anybody out. But I said, and I had these simple words, it's not what we thought. It's not what we thought. I won't go into all the details of what we thought being born again, but it would not have been something we wanted to be or do. The people that were born again that we knew weren't like us. At least that's the way we saw it. But over these years, I've realized this life is like a life that you're not going to get anywhere else. The A-plus life. As my friend Steve Parks, who is no longer with us, was on the board of 721 Ministries, used to say, there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. So I want to spend some time talking about it. What does it look like? How can we have it? What are the areas in our life that we can examine to have a real honest assessment as to whether we do have it or how close or how far away we are? But I want to start with this passage in Acts 5. And I just love this passage. The disciples have all been arrested. They're in jail. It's nighttime. Who knows what's going to happen next to them? But an angel comes and rescues them. Let's take a look at this passage. It's Acts 5:19. But during the night, an angel of the Lord opened the doors of the jail and brought them out. Verse 20. Go, stand in the temple courts, he said, and tell the new people all about this new life. Now, I would have expected the angel to say, go stand in the temple courts and tell the people all about Jesus' teachings, his miracles, the water to wine, the walking on water, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes, the parables, the stories. Go tell them all about that. Tell them about the resurrection. And I'm sure they did include all of those things, but that's not what the angel said. The angel said, go tell them about this new life. The life we call the A-plus life. Now, let me be quick to say the A-plus life is not prosperity gospel. It's not if you give money to God's work or to a church or whatever, you'll get a lot of money in return. Or if you do good things for the Lord, he's going to bless you richly with material things. He might. But that's not what we're talking about. The A-plus life is a life that just surpasses anything that would have to do with materialism. And we'll talk about some words that we associate with that. But first, I want you to think about some questions. And I want you to think deeply about these questions. The first one is, can you have this A-plus life? Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. Can you have this A-plus life? Because you may think, well, you're talking about what monks have when they retreat into a monastery. That's the only way you can have it. In this rough and tumble world, busy, sinful, with all the things going wrong. No, I cannot possibly have the A-plus life in this world. One cannot have it in this sick, sinful world. You may think that way. But Jesus didn't think that way. So the first question is, do you believe you can even have it, or is it just for super Christians, or do you have to be a monk? But the ancillary question is, can you have this A+ life in your circumstances? In what is going on in your life? Without anything changes, can you have the A+ life with maybe what we call the 3 M's, the money, marriage, malady? Your marriage isn't going well, money's not going well, you've got some type of malady, an illness, or whatever. Can you have it in your present circumstances without them changing? Because I think what Jesus would say is, if you cannot find it here, you will not find it anywhere, because it's not based on circumstances. That's the first question. Can you have it? The second question is, where do you not have it? And we'll examine that. We'll talk about some categories, but we have to look honestly at ourselves and say, where do I not have it? The third question is, why don't I? What is getting in the way? And then the fourth question is, how to have it. Now, let's start this little exploration with some words that come to mind. Think about it. The A+ life, the life that is truly life, life to the full. What are some words that might come to mind? And when I did this with the men on the whiteboard, we would get various words from the fruit of the Spirit, Galatians 5:22 and 23, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, gentleness, self-control, faithfulness. We'd get those kind of words. And those are all good, and they do apply for sure. I want to throw two or three others out that I think really, they just resonate with me. The first one would be freedom. In Galatians 5:1, we read, "It is for freedom that Christ has set you free. Stand firm then. Do not allow yourselves to be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." It is, Galatians is, in my book and in many others, is considered the freedom book. It is for freedom that you have been set free. It is for freedom that Jesus has set you free. Stand firm then, and do not allow yourselves to be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Freedom. Freedom from and freedom to. Freedom from your old self, the things that have mastered you, the things that you're a slave to, the baggage you're carrying around in your heart, or bad habits. Freedom from all that, and then freedom to actually live out the life He wants for you. Freedom. And I believe that if we ran a poll across the country of just everyone in the country that it wouldn't have to be Christians or atheists or anything, and you said, give us 5 words that you associate with being a Christian. Or perhaps we take it a step further and say, give us 5 words that you associate with being an evangelical Christian or a disciple of Jesus. I don't think freedom would be in those top 5. But if you're living this life, you know that it is a life of freedom. The next word is full. And one of the things, I've reflected on this in the last few weeks. I think the greatest gift that Jesus has given me after salvation is that He filled all the holes I had inside. I just had so many holes. Of course, Blaise Pascal said we're all born with a God-shaped hole inside. C.S. Lewis says if you're trying to find happiness and you cannot find it in this world, then it should be obvious, I'm paraphrasing, that you were meant for another world. I had all these holes, and I was desperately all my life trying to fill them. Now, you might not have been able to see that from the outside, but I had them inside. And so let's just categorize it as sex, drugs, rock and roll, work, athletics, competition, whatever. And over time, Jesus just filled those holes. It's full. That sense of full is part of the A+ life. And I want to just read to you from Ephesians chapter 3, a wonderful prayer. By the way, Ephesians 1 and Ephesians 3 have these 2 wonderful prayers. "For this reason I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of His glorious riches He may strengthen you with power through His Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the saints, to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, and here comes the full, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. Jesus said, you'll be filled to such a full measure that it'll be tamped down and running over. Streams of living water will flow from within you. You'll be so full. They'll flow out and over from within you, full. I have reached this point in my life, and have for several years, where I can look at the things that used to haunt me, or used to tempt me, or used to control me, or used to have a mastery over me, and I can just say, no thanks, I'm full. No thanks, I'm full. Yes, that's still a beautiful car, or a beautiful horse, or a beautiful woman, or that food, or that drug, or that extra money. Yes, that's all still, I see it's still desirable, or still nice, or whatever words you want to use, but no thanks, I'm full. And then the last one would be content. And of course, Philippians 4 is a famous passage where Paul talks about being content. But it's not content in the sense of, I'm just going to sit back and not do anything the rest of my life. That's not the kind of content we're talking about. We're talking about a content that says, I don't need anything. It just flows right off of no thanks, I'm full. It's a interesting passage where Paul writes, and it gets misused so often, although it doesn't offend me that it gets misused. It does to some. I'll be in Philippians 4, verse 11. I'm not saying this that you've helped me. He's talking to the people from Philippi. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Let's come back to I have learned in a moment. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned. There it is again. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. I can find contentment everywhere is what he says. When we read, I can do all things, or I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Yes, I think that does apply to just about everywhere in life. I cannot do anything without his strength. Not anything I want to do. But I need his strength, but in everything that I do. But in this particular case, he's saying, I can do this because I've learned to lean on his strength. I have learned. Now, let's just think for a minute, what would that learning process look like? In well-fed or hungry? In plenty or in want? I have learned. And I think what that process will look like is he has learned to not let his feelings dominate him. I think about so often we look at our lives and it looks like a curve, a sine wave like this. It's up and down and up and down. When things are good, when we're in the feast, we're here, and when we're in the famines, we're down here. Paul is saying, I've learned that I cut right through the middle. When I'm in, my feasts are like famines, and my famines are like feasts. I cut right through the middle, still always on a growing upward trajectory. But think about this. When he's in a feast, when I'm in a feast, if I've learned to be content in any and every situation, if I'm living the life to the full, then the highs don't get me too high. And the lows don't get me too low. In either situation, I can say to myself, this isn't going to last. This is not where life to the full is. I like this. I don't like this. But this isn't where life is. Life to the full is only because I've learned to be content. So these words that come to mind when I think about what does life to the full mean and look like, and the A+ life, I want you to think about it for a minute, because I've got just three more examples that I think paint the picture of what the A+ life looks like. Two of them come from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and another one comes from one of Paul's letters. In his Beatitudes in Matthew 5, 6, and 9, Jesus says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the peacemakers. When you see Jesus talk about blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, a very helpful way to think of righteousness is being in right relationship. Being in right relationship with your Heavenly Father, with others, with yourself, and with God's creation. If you are driven If your desire is to be in a right relationship with your Heavenly Father, with others around you, with yourself, and with God's creation all around you, you are going to be living a righteous life. If I'm seeking a right relationship, it's very similar to seeking to be a peacemaker. When I'm in a potential conflict, and I think to myself, well, there's several ways I can handle this. I can power up, I can attack, I can counterattack, I can withdraw. There's all kinds of ways to handle things, but if I really want to promote peace, if I really want to be in a right relationship, then I'm going to behave in a different way. I'm going to behave more as Jesus would have me behave. So that's being a peacemaker and being someone who seeks to be in a right relationship. That's life to the full. The next one comes out of Matthew 5, and this is a really, really difficult one to think about. Jesus says, let your yes be yes and your no be no. You don't have to swear oaths. You don't have to go, I swear to God, or I promise you, or on my mother's grave. Just simply let your yes be yes and your no be no. I doubt you can do that. I have a hard time doing that. Now, he doesn't mean literally yes, yes, no, no in any situation. What he's saying is a simple response that just addresses the situation. It may be a sentence, it may be two sentences, or it may just be a yes, yes, no, no type of thing. But Jesus follows that with anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Think about that. If I'm not able to just give you a simple answer, yes or no, with a simple statement, a simple response, but instead I feel like I have to rationalize or justify, or I have to accuse you or counterattack, I have to deflect or whatever, that's all coming from fear. That's all coming from a lack of trust, and that's coming from the evil one. So think about the A+ life. I can just say my yes is yes, my no is no. And then the other is a very familiar passage, 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. Be joyful always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances. You're finding joy in all situations because you've learned to be content in any and every circumstance. You're praying continually. You're in a conversational walk. This is a Dallas Willard quotation. A conversational walk with God through life, talking with Him about what we're doing together. Be joyful always, pray continually, give thanks. Give thanks. No thanks, I'm full. Give thanks in all circumstances. That is the A+ life. And I've learned, and I've mentioned this often, I've learned to say when things are uncertain or a little bit wobbly or a little bit scary, some anxiety in there, I've learned to say, I'm going to thank you now, Heavenly Father, before I see how you work this out. Because I know from all these years of 30 years of walking with you, I know I'll be thanking you later. So I'm going to thank you now. That, my friend, is the A+ life. So I mentioned those words. I mentioned those passages. What is getting in the way? That would be a question that we had in our top 4 questions. What is getting in the way? And I will tell you that the main character is getting in the way is you. It's yourself trying to control things, trying to make sure that you white knuckle life so that it goes the way you think it has to go. Self is the problem. Now, in a couple of minutes, we'll see what the solution is, which I'll tell you in advance is die to self. Die to self. Die to self. Kill off the old self. The old self is nothing but trouble. The new self, the self that Jesus instills in you, there's life and peace. There's the life that is truly life. But the old self, no good. Nothing but a nemesis. Die to self is the answer. But let's see how Jesus frames this. Luke 9:23. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, not deny themselves things necessarily, but deny their self and take up their cross daily, more often than not, several times a day, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will save it. It's interesting what he's saying in that verse 24 is if you're trying to hold on to the life that you think you have to have, if you're not willing to relinquish it, to abandon the outcome, to let Jesus, you do your part, but to let Jesus be in control of your life, then you'll never find the life that he has for you. You'll never find the A-plus life if you're still stuck on controlling things, thinking you have to try to save the life that you think. You'll lose it. You won't find the A-plus life. But if you're willing to let go of it, if you're willing to loosen your grip on it, then you can start to find the A-plus life. You know, when Jesus talks about this in Luke 17, it's a similar, there are similar statements, but it's a little bit different situation. But he brings in that chapter 17 of Luke, he brings in Lot's wife. And he talks about saving and losing and saving, and he says this is what Lot's wife was doing. Go to chapter 17 and you'll see, because you oftentimes ask yourself, well, why, Lot's wife looked back at Sodom and Gomorrah and she turned up a pillar of stone. She looked back because she wanted to save the life that she had down in Sodom and Gomorrah. Jesus says you have to be willing to loosen your grip on that. And then in Luke 14, Jesus does something that nobody with any sense who's developing a ministry would do. He tries to run people off. He's going to up the ante so much that he says, I don't want you following me unless you really understand what you're doing. He says, and we read, large crowds were traveling with Jesus, and turning to them he said, and he really ups the ante, if anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life. Let me be quick to tell you that hate in both the Greek and the Hebrew is sane, S-A-N-E. It doesn't mean hate as we think hate. It means put in second place. It means love less. So let me read it that way. If anyone comes to me and does not put in second place their father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life. If you don't put that in second place to me, Jesus says, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross, die to self, and follow me cannot be my disciple. So I have a question for you. Can you be saved and not be a disciple of Jesus? Can you be saved and not be a disciple of Jesus? And the answer is yes. Because Jesus so often says, if you want to be my disciple. You can be saved. But a disciple is someone, there's a saying with the Jews, covered in the dust of the rabbi. Covered in the dust of the rabbi. It means that as a disciple, you're following so closely that the dust from his sandals is kicking up on you. A disciple is someone who's really digging in, really wanting to go deeper into the kingdom, really wanting to get closer and closer to Jesus. So yes, you can be saved and not be a disciple. I wouldn't recommend it. We hear people that will refer to Jesus saying that you should examine the cost of discipleship. I would encourage you to examine the cost of non-discipleship because it's much higher. But he says, so the first question is, can you be saved and not be a disciple? And the answer is yes. But the second question is, can you not be a disciple and live the A-plus life to the full? And the answer to that is no. No, you cannot. So Jesus gives us these examples that, the problem is self. And the solution is die to self. Crucify self. Kill it off. And this is a lifelong process. But that is the answer that will open the gate into the kingdom and in deeper and deeper into the kingdom for the A-plus life. Paul puts it like this. And what we're getting ready to read in Galatians 2:20, I think is his compelling mantra. I think it's what gets him up every day to keep going because it is. And I want you to notice how personal what he says is. This is Galatians 2:20. Familiar passage. I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in. Now, I have. What's been crucified? I. Self has been crucified. I'm dying to self. And I, self, my old self no longer lives, but Christ lives in me. Now, the life I live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved and I'm leaving that blank, and gave himself for. He could just as easily, I think, Paul could write us. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved us and gave himself for us. That wouldn't surprise me. But that's not what he says. He says me. He says me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. It's so personal. It's so personal to Paul. Is it personal to you? Is it a generic, yes, I know Jesus died on the cross to enable anyone to be able to find salvation through him when they place their trust in him? Or is it really personal, that is visceral, that you feel that he died for you? You feel it in your bones, and you're forever grateful. That is the A-plus life, dying to self, killing off self. I have been crucified, and I no longer live, but it is Christ who lives in me. Now let's finish this up with looking at some categories that help us examine where we have it and where we don't have it, or how close we are. Now, there's a passage in 2 Corinthians 13, which we'll look at in a minute, but God is not grading you A, B, C, D, E. He's not saying, look, Sam's got an A here and a B here and a D there, or straight C's. God's not doing it. But we are encouraged to self-examine. Because if we do not look inside, well, one, we'll continue to live with these blind spots. If we're not honest and bluntly transparent with ourselves, we'll continue to live with the blind spots. And two, we won't know where we're falling short. And therefore, we won't know how to make adjustments in our life. 2 Corinthians 13:5, examine yourselves to see whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not realize that Christ Jesus is in you? Unless, of course, you fail the test. So we are commanded, we are encouraged to examine ourselves. A football coach, Clemson's football coach, Dabo Swinney, when I'm doing this with men's groups around the state of South Carolina, I have to be careful because I have a lot of Carolina fans and Georgia fans and North Carolina fans, and they don't necessarily cotton up to Clemson, but they don't really necessarily like Dabo. They may not dislike him, but he has a lot of corny sayings. But I heard him say this: you get what you inspect, not what you expect. Think about it. You get what you inspect, not what you expect. If you're not inspecting it, if you're not looking at yourself, you're not going to see where you want to make some adjustments, where you want to make some changes. You're not going to get there by expecting it. Look closely at yourself. So let's just take these as we finish up. Marriage, children, work, parents, and siblings. And what I did with the men, I asked them to take just 1 minute and give themselves a grade. A plus, A minus, B plus, B minus, C, D, F. And I said, if you take longer than a minute, you're overthinking it. So just write down what your initial response is, whether or not, how close you're living the A-plus life in your marriage, with your children, with your work, with your parents and siblings. So I gave them a minute to do it. I would give you a minute, but you just think that through. How would you grade your marriage? And my question to the men was, is a C or below acceptable in any of these 4 areas? Is a C or below acceptable in any of these 4 areas? And I think the answer is clearly no, it is not. No, it is not. If your marriage is not a B to an A plus, if your relationship with your children, let's just stay there for a moment, then if you're following Jesus, it falls on you to fix that, to correct that. What have I seen in A-plus marriages? I see very few A-plus marriages. Very few. But what I see is that the couple, they actually like each other. They really do. They like each other. They kid in a fun way. There's never any kind of a jab. I mean, I'm sure they fight behind closed doors. Everybody does. They get in arguments, but they genuinely like each other. You've been out to dinner with couples where there's all this little nitpicking and there's these little jabs. It's almost like they're they're fighting in front of you, saying things they cannot say, or sliding it in. It's so uncomfortable. But very rarely, but sometimes I see couples that actually like each other, and they're affectionate towards each other. Not necessarily sex, but affectionate. They're kind to each other. Do you have that in your marriage? And if not, then it starts with you. I love the AA saying, if you've got a problem, you're the problem. With your children. Now, if you have young children, then those children, I think an A+ in that situation is those children they know that you love them. But more than that, they know that you are proud of them, that you adore them. Now here comes the key phrase, apart from their performance. Apart from their performance. They know you adore them. They know you love them. They know you like them. They know you're proud of them just for who they are. If you have older children, I think a sign of an A+ relationship with the older children is they call you sometimes just to chat. Yes, they may call you with a problem, but they call just to chat. They just want to catch up. And along with that, they like being around you. You and your wife, you and your husband, they actually like being around you. With work, you may say, I don't have the kind of job that you have, Sam. I'm not in ministry, men's ministry. I don't know. I can't get an A+ life at work. And I would say, well, number one, the first step is to bring Jesus into all the details of your work. Bring him in. Discuss them with him. Bring him into all the details. And then as you can, seek to bring him into any kind of interactions you have. Not beating people over the head with the Bible, just letting him shine through you. And then with your parents and siblings, if there's a strain there, if there's a conflict there, fix that. You want that to be healthy. Well, those are the areas that we can look quickly to see. In our next video, we'll talk about body, mind, and spirit, and where are you on that? Because you'll never have the A+ life if your body, mind, and spirit are not thriving and in harmony. But today, I want to finish with these two questions. What would die to self look like in an actual real life situation? And we'll talk about it in our next video. You're in a real life situation. You're in conflict with your husband and your wife, with your children. What would die to self look like in an actual real life situation? And how can you utilize Holy Spirit power, which is energy, clarity, and creativity? Because without the Holy Spirit, you'll never do it. And I want to conclude with a quick example of what would die to self look like in any particular situation. My wife, Dina, we've been married 10 years. She is a very successful, a very hard-working dermatologist. She has, because of that, she can overpower people. And sometimes she'll say things to me, and I will think to myself, I'm not taking that. I'm pushing back. The other morning, she popped off about something. I don't know if she even knew she had, but it rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought to myself, it was a calculation. Die to self. Let it go. It doesn't matter. Die to self. And I did. A+. We had an A+ Saturday morning. Later that day, in my opinion, she popped off about something else that I really didn't like. And I actually had the thought, I'm not dying to self on this one. Nope. Not going to do it. I'm going to tell her how I feel. I'm reacting to that, not even responding. I am not dying to self. Now, you tell me how you think it went after that. It was not the A+ afternoon. I had a choice. What did it matter? It wasn't important. It was just me wanting to justify myself or counterattack or set the record straight. Die to self, die to self, die to self. And you know why? Because there's more. There's so much more. You know it. Follow Jesus. Come and find him.